My name is Katie Vale, 31 years old. The gate agent's voice crackled through the speakers at 3:17 a.m., a tired alto repeating the final boarding call for Flight 442 to Maui, and my boarding pass trembled in my damp fingers like it wanted to leap first. Cold air blew across the empty concourse, lifting the edge of the ticket until it tapped against my knuckles. Tick, 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 an impatient metronome counting down to the life I hadn't dared to claim. Somewhere 40 minutes away, in a house that had learned the weight of my footsteps and the shape of my silence, 32 place settings sat on the dining table I'd measured and arranged and polished until the glassware held my distorted reflection. The turkey I should have brined at dawn was still a glacier in the refrigerator. My phone buzzed in my pocket with one more message from Hudson. "Hope you're up cooking, babe. Mom's already texting about timing." I watched the screen go dark again, felt the decision settle, heavy and gleaming as a key in a lock. "Boarding now," the agent called. A handful of travelers lifted their heads. I lifted my suitcase. The wheels hummed over speckled tile, and with each turn, the knot in my chest drew tighter. Then, strangely, looser, like something cinched for years, had finally run out of rope. I walked down the jet bridge, the carpet thin and industrial beneath my soles, and my breath fogged the narrow window where a sliver of wing waited in the dark. The door to the plane framed a pocket of yellow light, and beyond it, a row of seats where no one would ask me if the stuffing would be less dry this year. I paused at the threshold because it felt wrong to cross it without a ceremony, without a witness. In our house, Vivien would arrive at 2, staccato heels hitting wood like a judge's gavel. Sharp, decisive, final, she liked to say about punctuality, and about me when I followed instructions without protest. She would sweep in with her cream coat and opinions, her revised menu scrawled in tidy script. Hudson would take the call he'd forgotten to mention, tell me afterward it was only an hour, maybe 2, and later ask if I'd remembered to warm the rolls he'd never lifted a finger to knead. They would stand in the doorway to the kitchen, talking across me as if I were a reliable appliance, and I would smile because it was easier to be a brand of machine than a messy, complicated person with limits. "Welcome aboard," the flight attendant said, and I stepped inside. The air smelled like recirculated coffee and lemon cleaner, and the cabin lights softened everyone into plausible versions of themselves. The college kid folded around a backpack, the businessman already opening spreadsheets, the couple murmuring in the private dialect of people who still want to impress each other. I found my seat by the window, pressed my palm to the cool plastic armrest, and let the relief hit so hard it almost felt like grief. Freedom has an undertow. It pulls you backward even as the shoreline recedes. I buckled in and stared at the runway lights stitched in a loose constellation. On cue, my phone vibrated again. Hudson this time, with a stack of gray bubbles waiting for blue answers. "Are you picking up the pies, or should I?" "Mom says the Sanders kid has a nut allergy. Heads up." "Babe, you awake?" I powered the phone down and placed it face first in the seat pocket, the way you set a picture frame flat when you're not ready to look. Outside, a little service cart stuttered along the wing, and the ground crew's breath made ghosty shapes, there and gone. It would be easier if the story started here, clean-cut, decisive arc, but stories like mine begin earlier, in small permissions that look like kindness. Yes, I'll host. Yes, I can make your mother's pot roast the right way. Yes, I'll try again next time to make the gravy like she remembers. No, like she says she remembers. Yes, I can do 15, maybe 18, 22. All right, 30, sure, 32. Each yes a thread you don't feel around your wrist until the bow cinches tight. I tried to trace it back to the first knot. Maybe it was the day Vivien uninvited Ruby because newly divorced didn't fit her table's idea of gratitude. Maybe it was the afternoon Hudson laughed on his way to golf and said, "You're like a machine at this," with the warmth of a compliment and the cold of a verdict. Maybe it was the moment Mrs. Suzanne in the grocery line looked at my mountain of produce and said, gently, "Honey, that's not help. That's watching someone drown from the dock." The captain announced a short taxi and an early arrival. I closed my eyes and let the vibration of the engines climb my spine, a restless animal wanting out. I had set an alarm for 3:30. My body woke at 2:47 anyway, as if duty had installed a clock behind my ribs. In the dark kitchen, the guest list lay where Vivien had placed it, presented with ceremony, like evidence. 32 names. Mine wasn't on it. I'd lifted the paper and read it twice, and the second time my eyes caught on the absence like a finger on a splinter. Somewhere between the names and the menu, she'd upgraded 3 kinds of stuffing, 7 sides, 4 desserts, homemade crust because store-bought didn't earn you compliments. Something had shifted from hospitality into spectacle. Not a meal, a performance. Not a family, an audience. I heard my own voice, small and trained. Of course. I'll make sure everything's perfect. Perfection is so polite right up until it eats you. I hadn't planned the rebellion. I had opened a travel site the way some people open the fridge when they're not hungry. Compulsion, not intention. A banner slid across the screen. Last-minute Thanksgiving escape to Hawaii. The flight left at 4:15 a.m., almost exactly when the oven timer would have chirped me into duty. I tapped to read details. Then I tapped again, the way you do when you half hope a door is locked and half hope it swings. It asked for a name. I typed mine. Only mine. The screen brightened with a confirmation, as if paradise were simply a matter of filling in blanks you've ignored for years. Upstairs, Hudson breathed in steady metronome time. On his nightstand, the phone lit with a call from Vivien at 3:00 a.m., her voice a thin wire. "I'm worried about the allergy and liability, Hudson. Are you sure Katie knows what she's doing?" He comforted her with faith he didn't have to earn. She always handles it. There it was, the thesis of my marriage tucked into a sentence like a blade in a bouquet. She always handles it. I packed in the quiet way people do when they mean it. A yellow sundress I hadn't worn because too casual for the places we went. Sandals with a strap I'd repaired twice because I liked how they made my ankles feel honest. I wrote a note and didn't pad it with apologies. "Hudson, something came up and I had to leave town. You'll need to handle Thanksgiving dinner. The groceries are in the fridge. Katie." The pen left a groove in the paper. I left the note beside Vivien's list so the cause and effect could hold hands. Back on the plane, a child somewhere behind me giggled at a cartoon, and the sound pierced my seriousness like sunlight through blinds. I looked out at the wing and pictured the dining room at 2 p.m. The table perfect, the air perfumed with roasted nostalgia, the compliments arranged like garnishes on Vivien's smile. Then I pictured a different room, a different hour, the doorbell, the explanations, the moment someone would ask out loud what they'd been quietly assuming for years. Where is she? And the quiet that would follow when no one had a good answer. In that silence, maybe something else would become audible. How much one person had been asked to carry, and how light it felt in other people's hands to let her. The plane pushed from the gate and turned. The runway lights streamed into a bright ladder. The engines muscled up, thunder turning to lift, and the city dropped away, streetlights thinning, neighborhoods shrinking, the whole tired geometry of duty smoothing into lace. I pressed my forehead to the window, the chill a blessing. Fear rose, bright and honest, and with it a companion I hadn't felt in years, hunger. Not for food, God knew I could make food happen, but for a life with more doors than lists, more choices than, of course. As we climbed into the dark, I felt the past tug once, twice, then let go, and in the leaving, I sensed the first faint thread of a future pulling taut from somewhere I could not yet see. I didn't know if Hudson would understand. I didn't know if Vivien would ever forgive me. I didn't know, not really, what would be left when the applause stopped and the stage lights cooled. But I knew this. I was finally walking off stage before the curtain trapped me there for good. The seatbelt sign chimed, and a row of tiny blue bulbs winked on above me like cautious stars. I breathed in, fuller than I had in months, opened my eyes to the blank of the horizon, and let the night carry me west. The memory presses in even before the plane levels above the clouds. I can still hear it, the sharp percussion of Vivien's heels on our hardwood floor, each click like a verdict handed down from a judge who never questioned her authority. She always entered our kitchen as though it were hers, surveying countertops the way generals scan a battlefield. That night, her perfume clung to the air, bright and insistent, while my own hands were submerged in scalding dishwater, skin flushed red as I scrubbed the pots from dinner. Hudson lounged in his chair, scrolling through his phone, oblivious, or maybe pretending to be. "Katie, darling," Vivien began in that tone she used when she was about to hand me a burden disguised as an honor. "We need to discuss Thanksgiving." I dried my fingers on a dish towel that already smelled faintly of bleach. "Of course," I said, forcing lightness into my voice. Vivien produced a folded sheet of paper from her designer handbag, the gesture so deliberate it felt rehearsed. She laid it flat on the counter as though presenting evidence. "The guest list," she announced. I unfolded it, scanning the columns of names until my vision blurred. My throat closed around the number. 32. 32 people? My voice caught, almost comical in its disbelief. Vivien's laugh was a brittle sound, like crystal fracturing. "Technically 31 and a half. Timmy Sanders counts as a half person. He's only 6, but his appetite hardly qualifies as small." She lifted her eyes, satisfied at her own wit. Hudson finally looked up from his phone long enough to offer a vague nod. "You got this, babe. You always do." Always. The word struck me harder than it should have. Always, as in unquestioned, unchallenged, inevitable. Vivien smoothed another page over the counter, this one filled with her meticulous handwriting. "Here's the menu. I've upgraded a few things. 3 kinds of stuffing, ham with pineapple glaze, 7 sides, 4 desserts, homemade pie crust, of course. Store-bought won't do." My pulse quickened, a menu that would challenge a team of chefs handed to one woman with a smile. "Vivien," I started carefully, "that's a lot for one person." She dismissed me with a flick of her hand, already scrolling through her phone. "Nonsense. You've gotten so good at this. Everyone raves about your cooking." Hudson, instead of defending me, returned to his feed. "Yeah, you've got it down to a science." Science. Machine. Efficient. Words meant as praise, but twisted into chains. Later that night, when the house had quieted and Hudson snored softly beside me, I sat at the kitchen table with the list spread in front of me. I traced the names one by one: cousins, uncles, neighbors, country club acquaintances, people who would arrive expecting abundance, plates refilled before they thought to ask, glasses polished, desserts lined like trophies, all of them taken care of by me. And then my eyes caught on the absence. Ruby's name was missing. Ruby, who had joined every Thanksgiving since I married into the family. Ruby, who had just gone through a divorce that left her raw and uncertain. I dialed her number, guilt rising like bile. "Katie, it's late. Everything okay?" "Are you coming this year?" My voice cracked. A pause, heavy with something unsaid. Vivien called, suggested I might be more comfortable somewhere smaller. She thought, given my situation, it would be less awkward. Less awkward. That was how Vivien defined pain. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "She uninvited you." She didn't use that word, but yes. After we hung up, I sat in the dark kitchen staring at the list until the names blurred. I thought of Ruby, quietly erased because she no longer fit the picture. I thought of myself standing in the same precarious place, useful until I wasn't, capable until I stumbled, welcomed until I wasn't perfect. A shadow passed across my reflection in the kitchen window. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. The woman staring back looked smaller, paler, like a ghost wearing my face, and deep in her eyes a warning whispered, "You're one bad Thanksgiving away from being erased too." The next morning, the grocery store aisles yawned empty under buzzing fluorescent lights. My cart groaned beneath turkeys, hams, vegetables stacked like a wall. I swiped our credit card and flinched at the total, knowing Hudson would later grumble about expenses without ever asking how much labor those groceries required. In line, Mrs. Suzanne from next door tilted her head at my overflowing cart. "Big dinner?" "Thanksgiving for 32, I said, too brightly. Her eyes widened. "By yourself?" "My husband will help," I lied automatically. Her gaze softened into pity. "Honey, that's not help. That's watching someone drown while standing on the dock." Her words followed me home, echoing louder with each clatter of pots, each peel of vegetables, each minute stolen from my own body. By evening, the counters disappeared beneath bowls and pans. My hands were raw, wrists aching, the kitchen fogged with steam and exhaustion. Hudson drifted in with his coffee, surveying the chaos like a tourist. "Smells good already," he said, as if magic had summoned it. "Can you help me lift this turkey?" I asked, muscles straining. He checked his watch. Actually, promised the guys a quick round of golf. Pre-holiday tradition, but I'll be back in time for the heavy lifting tomorrow. Tomorrow, always tomorrow. I stared at him, stuffing dripping from my fingers, unable to find words sharp enough to pierce his oblivion. He kissed the top of my head in passing, already halfway out the door. When the lock clicked behind him, I whispered into the empty kitchen, "I'm not a machine." But the walls swallowed the words, and the silence answered back like it had 100 times before. The kitchen became a battlefield. Counters vanished under chopping boards and mixing bowls, stacks of vegetables waiting like silent soldiers for me to cut them down. Steam fogged the windows until the world outside disappeared, leaving only this room, this duty. My body ached, but stopping wasn't an option. Stopping meant failure, and failure in this house was not forgiven. By noon, my back screamed, and my stomach gnawed at itself. I hadn't eaten more than a handful of crackers. My hands were cracked and bleeding from constant washing, red crescents under my nails, from chopping herbs too quickly. Still, there was no space for weakness. No one in this house wanted to see weakness. At 5, the phone rang. Vivien's name glowed across the screen. My heart clenched. "Just checking in, dear," her voice lilted, casual as if she hadn't just upended my week. "How are things coming along?" I looked around at the disaster zone. Stacks of unbaked pies, raw birds, hulking like corpses on the counter, mountains of dirty dishes already crusted with dough. "Fine," I lied, my voice flat. "Wonderful. Oh, I nearly forgot. The Sanders boy has a severe nut allergy. Life-threatening if there's exposure. You'll need to remake any dishes with nuts." The breath punched out of me. "I've already made 3. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're so good at managing details." She hung up before I could finish. The phone slipped from my hand and landed with a dull thud. I pressed both palms into the counter until the laminate dug into my skin. 3 entire dishes, gone. Hours of work wasted. More hours I didn't have, demanded. Something cracked inside me. Not a full break, just the first fracture in a dam holding back years of pressure. That night, Hudson came home smelling faintly of beer and fresh grass, cheerful from his golf tradition. "How'd the cooking go, babe? Everything ready for tomorrow?" I sat at the kitchen table, my body slumped, my hair clinging damp to my forehead. 3 of the dishes have nuts. I need to redo them. I can't keep up. Hudson shrugged, easy. "So make new ones. No big deal." "No big deal?" I whispered, staring at him. "Hudson, I need help. Real help. Not just carving turkey. I need you to cook. I can't do this alone." He blinked, startled by the sharpness in my voice. "But you're so much better at it than I am. Mom specifically requested your casserole, your stuffing. People come expecting your food." "Then maybe people can come expecting yours too," I snapped, the words breaking free like glass shattering. The silence that followed was heavy, unnatural between us. His eyes hardened, then slid away. "You're obviously stressed. I'll help tomorrow, but tonight I've got an early meeting." "What meeting?" "Conference call with Singapore, time zones, but I'll be done before people arrive." Another detail withheld until the last moment, another weight added to the scale already tipping. I stared at him until the image blurred. "When did you become someone who could watch me drown and call it tradition?" He didn't answer. He just went upstairs, leaving the smell of beer and fresh-cut grass behind. Later, in bed, sleep refused to come. My body was wrecked, but my mind spun with impossible math. 3 turkeys, 7 sides, 4 desserts, nut-free substitutions. 10 hours of work needed for 20 hours of tasks. The timeline didn't add up, no matter how I sliced it. I closed my eyes, whispering numbers, bargaining with physics, bargaining with myself. And then, through the darkness, another thought whispered, a dangerous one. What if I didn't do it? What if I stayed in bed and let the alarm scream? What if the doorbell rang at 2 and 32 people found nothing? For a moment, I felt the absurd urge to laugh. The idea was so foreign, so unthinkable, it was almost funny. Almost. But then an image bloomed in my mind. Vivien's face as she arrived to chaos instead of perfection. Hudson's confusion as he realized I wasn't going to fix everything. Relatives shifting uncomfortably at an empty table. And for the first time in years, the thought didn't just terrify me. It thrilled me. The alarm on my phone was set for 3:30 a.m., but my body jolted awake at 2:47, as if duty itself had installed a clock inside me. The house was silent, steeped in the kind of darkness that feels alive. Beside me, Hudson slept deeply, one arm flung across the bed, his breathing steady and oblivious. I lay still for a long moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. The numbers churned in my head: 3 turkeys, 7 sides, 4 desserts, plus the replacements for the nut-laced dishes I'd already prepared. 10 hours for 20 hours of work. Even if I carved minutes out of thin air, the equation refused to balance. I sat up slowly, the sheets whispering against my skin, and padded barefoot down the hallway. The floorboards creaked like accomplices. In the kitchen, yesterday's chaos still lay where I had abandoned it, flour dusting the counters like snowfall, knives drying crookedly in the rack, the guest list resting where Vivien had dropped it, smug and undeniable. 32 names. I picked it up again, staring at the names until my eyes blurred. None of them were mine. That was when the thought returned, quiet but insistent, like a voice in a locked room. What if I left? Not forever, not dramatically, just left. Drove somewhere, anywhere, and let them face the consequences of their own impossible demands. The idea was terrifying. It went against every reflex I had trained into myself. I had never not shown up, never let anyone down, never put my needs ahead of theirs. But then another voice whispered, sharper, clearer, what kind of person expects one woman to feed 32 people alone? I poured myself a cup of coffee, hands trembling, steam curled upward like a ghost escaping. I sat at the table with the glow of my phone casting shadows across my face. Out of habit, I opened a travel site, just to look, just to imagine. The first listing made my breath catch. Last-minute Thanksgiving getaway to Hawaii. Flight departs 4:15 a.m. Limited seats available. My eyes flicked to the oven clock. 2:56. Almost the exact time I should have been prepping turkeys. I tapped the listing. My finger hovered, hesitated, tapped again. The page asked for passenger details. Name, age, birthday. My own information slid into the boxes like it had been waiting there all along. The screen brightened. Passenger, Katie Vale, party size 1. Party of 1. The words looked strange, thrilling, dangerous. I reached for my wallet. My hands shook so hard the card almost slipped. I stared at the final button. Book flight. My pulse roared in my ears. Upstairs, Hudson shifted in his sleep. On his nightstand, his phone lit up with a call. I crept closer, heart hammering. Vivien's name glowed in the dark. I listened as Hudson answered groggily. Mom, it's 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep, Vivien fretted, her voice a thin wire even through the speaker. What if Katie doesn't handle the allergy properly? What if something happens to that child? The liability alone... She'll handle it, Hudson muttered, already drifting back toward slumber. She always does. The blade hidden in that phrase cut me deeper than anything. She always does. Always. I turned away, bile in my throat, and returned to the kitchen. My suitcase waited in the closet, barely used. I pulled it out and began to pack. Not the clothes Hudson liked. Structured dresses, stiff blouses, but the ones I'd buried deep. The yellow sundress too casual for his taste. Sandals I'd glued back together because I loved the way they made me feel. On the counter, I left a note beside Vivien's guest list. Hudson, something came up and I had to leave town. You'll need to handle Thanksgiving dinner. The groceries are in the fridge. Katie. No apology, no explanation, just facts. I zipped the suitcase, each tooth of the zipper clicking like a countdown. The wheels whispered across the tile as I carried it to the door. My reflection caught in the window, pale, tired, but determined. The clock read 3:21 when I stepped into the night. The air was sharp and cold, but it filled my lungs with something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The driveway was damp with dew, my breath pluming white as I rolled the suitcase toward the car. The street was deserted, only the occasional porch light glowing like lonely beacons. It felt like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd really go through with it. I slid the suitcase into the trunk, hands trembling. For one long moment, I gripped the steering wheel and stared back at the house. The windows were dark, blinds drawn, the same house where I'd folded myself into silence year after year. My chest tightened, equal parts grief and relief. This wasn't just leaving for a trip. This was leaving them with the weight they'd piled on me without a thought. The tires crunched softly on the asphalt as I pulled away. Each passing streetlight seemed to mark a checkpoint. Still time to turn back, still time to crawl into bed and apologize in the morning, still time to keep drowning for the sake of tradition. But the car kept moving, and my grip on the wheel steadied. At the airport, the terminal buzzed with a strange kind of half-life. Travelers slumped in chairs, coffee steaming in paper cups, children dozing against tired parents. I rolled my suitcase through the fluorescent-lit halls, heart pounding so loudly it seemed impossible no one else could hear it. The gate agent scanned my ticket, her eyes skimming over me with professional indifference before softening into something almost kind. "Nice way to spend Thanksgiving, escaping to paradise," she said. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Something like that. On board. The cabin lights glowed a muted gold, casting every face in the same weary hopefulness. I slid into my window seat and pressed my palm against the cool plastic. The hum of the engines was steady, promising, alive. As passengers settled in, I pulled out my phone one last time. Notifications stacked the screen like accusations. 8 missed calls from Hudson, 3 from Vivien, a handful of texts pinging in rapid succession. "Where are you? Mom says you should start the turkey by 4. Did you get the cranberries? Answer me, Katie." I powered the phone down before guilt could claw its way inside. The engines roared, vibrating through the floor, and the plane began to roll. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the runway lights streak past like sparks from a fuse. With a sudden, forceful lift, we were airborne, rising, rising, the city shrinking into a scatter of glitter below. I should have felt fear, or guilt so sharp it buckled me in half. Instead, what filled me was something unfamiliar, almost intoxicating. Anticipation. I imagined Vivien's face when she arrived to find no turkeys in the oven, no sides simmering, no hostess waiting to serve her demands. I imagined Hudson stumbling downstairs, bewildered by silence instead of chaos, staring at the note I'd left like it was written in a language he didn't understand. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel dread about a family gathering. I felt a kind of savage curiosity. The flight attendant moved down the aisle, checking seatbelts. She paused at mine, offered a smile that seemed to linger just a moment too long, as if she recognized something in my face, the look of a woman finally walking out of her cage. "First time to Hawaii?" she asked softly. "Yes," I whispered. And though it wasn't the whole truth, it was close enough. Because this wasn't just my first flight to Hawaii. This was my first flight anywhere that wasn't mapped by someone else's expectations. The plane tipped gently, turning west, the night sky stretching infinite above us. I closed my eyes and let the vibration of freedom settle into my bones. Down below, 32 people would be arriving to an empty kitchen and an impossible question. What do we do now? And for once, their problem wasn't mine. Hudson woke with the kind of lazy stretch reserved for holidays, sunlight brushing against the blinds. The alarm blared at 7, and he rolled over, expecting to find my side of the bed empty, as it always was on Thanksgiving morning. Normally, by this hour, the house smelled of roasting turkey and caramelizing onions, the soundtrack of pots clanging and timers beeping, drifting upstairs like a promise. But the air was silent, flat. He frowned, rubbing his eyes, and padded downstairs in his boxers. The kitchen greeted him like a crime scene frozen mid-act. Vegetables chopped but uncooked, pie dough rolled but unbaked, birds still raw and hulking on the counter. The smell was not of feast, but of nothing. And then he saw it. A folded piece of paper propped against the guest list Vivien had left, like holy scripture. His name sprawled in my handwriting across the front. Hudson's pulse quickened. He unfolded it, scanning once, then again, refusing to understand. "Hudson, something came up and I had to leave town. You'll need to handle Thanksgiving dinner. The groceries are in the fridge. Katie." For a moment he laughed nervously, expecting a punchline, but the silence pressed back. He called my phone. Straight to voicemail. Again. Same result. "Bella, call me back. What happened? Whose emergency? You can't just... People are coming in 6 hours." His voice cracked into the emptiness. Still no reply. Panic flared sharp and unfamiliar. He dialed again, then tried my sister Carmen. She answered groggily. "Hudson, it's 7 in the morning. Is Katie with you?" "No, she left a note. Said she had to go out of town. Did she call you?" Silence. Then a low laugh. Not mocking, but edged with something like admiration. "Good for her." "Good for her? Carmen, 32 people are coming for dinner today. She vanished. You expected her to cook for 32 people by herself? Carmen's voice sharpened. Hudson, are you even listening to yourself? He hung up before she could say more, heart hammering. His hands shook as he redialed me. Straight to voicemail again. The doorbell rang, and his stomach dropped. Too soon. But when he opened the door, it wasn't relatives yet. It was his mother, Vivien, dressed in her cream coat, posture immaculate, eyes scanning him like a scanner reading barcodes. Well, she demanded, stepping inside, are the turkeys in? Hudson's mouth opened, but no sound came. He simply held up the note with trembling fingers. Vivien snatched it, eyes narrowing as she read. Her breath hissed. Impossible. Katie would never abandon Thanksgiving. She's gone, Hudson said hoarsely. Phone's off. No word. Vivien's face tightened, fury flickering under the polished surface. An absolute disaster. Do you have any idea what kind of humiliation this is? The Sanders will never forgive— Mom, Hudson interrupted sharply, surprising himself. What do we do? For once, she didn't have an immediate answer. They spent the next frantic hour calling every restaurant, every catering service, every hotel within driving distance. The responses were all the same. Laughter, apologies, disbelief. Thanksgiving for 32? Today? Impossible. By 9, Hudson had missed his conference call with Singapore. He barely noticed. Sweat dampened his shirt as he stared at the raw turkeys on the counter, YouTube tutorials pulled up on his phone. The steps blurred, his clumsy hands fumbling with ingredients Katie had always moved through like second nature. This is worse than I thought, Vivien muttered, sleeves rolled up as she tried to muscle a bird into a roasting pan. Flour streaked her immaculate blouse, her hair falling loose. These should have been in the oven hours ago. They'll never be ready in time. Hudson glanced at the oven clock. 10:03 a.m. Relatives would start arriving in 4 hours. He couldn't even figure out where Katie kept the stand mixer. His phone buzzed again. Uncle Raymond. Then Aunt Margaret. Then Cousin Cynthia. Each message carried the same expectation. Updates, directions, reassurance that the feast awaited. But there was no feast, only silence, raw birds, and the gnawing realization that without Katie, none of them knew what to do. By noon, the driveway was already filling. Car doors slammed, voices carried, laughter spilled toward the porch with the careless confidence of people who expected a feast waiting for them. Hudson's heart thudded as he opened the door to greet Cousin Cynthia and her new boyfriend, both grinning, a bottle of wine in hand. Something in their smiles faltered. The air carried no perfume of turkey or stuffing, only the faint, acrid scent of onions Vivien had half scorched while fumbling with the stove. Running a little behind, Hudson said, forcing cheer into his voice. More cars arrived, Uncle Raymond balancing foil-covered pans, the Sanders family in their pressed holiday attire, 6-year-old Timmy clinging to his mother's hand. Guests streamed in, filling the living room with chatter that grew increasingly uneasy as the empty dining table stared back at them, plates set, glasses gleaming, but no food. Aunt Margaret finally asked what everyone was thinking. "Where's Katie?" Hudson's mouth went dry. He looked at Vivien, who stood stiffly near the kitchen doorway, flour dust on her once perfect coat. Neither wanted to admit the truth, but silence stretched until it snapped. "She had to leave town," Hudson muttered. "Family emergency." A ripple moved through the room. Confusion, disbelief, whispers blooming like cracks in glass. "Today?" Ruby's sister asked, incredulous. "She left this morning, on Thanksgiving?" "What kind of emergency happens at 4 a.m? Someone else demanded. Hudson had no answer. He escaped to the kitchen, where Vivien was wrestling with the turkey like it was a live animal. "We can't tell them the truth," she hissed. "Do you understand? Do you want this family humiliated?" But humiliation was already leaking into every corner. Relatives peeked into the kitchen, eyes widening at the chaos. Piles of unwashed dishes, raw meat still unseasoned, Vivien red-faced and snapping at Hudson for handing her the wrong pan. Uncle Raymond cleared his throat. "What's the plan for dinner, then?" All eyes turned to Hudson. 32 people waiting, empty plates in front of them, the weight of tradition pressing down. Before he could stammer an answer, his phone buzzed. The room stilled as he glanced down. The name glowed. Katie. Every face sharpened with expectation. Finally, an explanation. Hudson tapped the screen. It wasn't a message. It was a photo. Katie, seated at a beachside restaurant, ocean stretching blue behind her, a yellow sundress catching the wind, her hair loose, her face unburdened and radiant in a way none of them had seen in years. In her hand, a tropical drink sweating under the Hawaiian sun. Beneath the image, her message, Thanksgiving dinner in paradise. Tell Vivien the turkey is her problem now. Gasps cut the air. A cousin's fork clattered onto the table. Hudson's throat closed. He looked up, faces blurring together, his mother, furious and pale, relatives stunned into silence. The Sanders already whispering with thinly veiled disdain. Vivien's voice sliced through. What does she say? Hudson swallowed, the words catching. She says, the turkey is our problem now. The room erupted. The dining room fractured like glass under a hammer. Voices rose in overlapping waves. Shock, outrage, disbelief. She planned this? Aunt Margaret demanded, her face blotchy with anger. Paradise? She's in Hawaii? Another cousin snapped. Unbelievable. Who abandons family like this? But not everyone's voice carried condemnation. From the corner, Carmen stepped forward, her expression fierce. She had arrived late, a casserole dish in hand, and now she set it down on the table with a hard thud. You're all missing the point, she said, her voice cutting clean through the chaos. Katie didn't abandon you. You abandoned her. The room froze, words caught in throats. Vivien's eyes narrowed, venom laced in her tone. Excuse me? Carmen's chin lifted. For years, you've piled impossible demands on her, and she's bent herself in half trying to meet them. Did any of you ever offer to help? Did any of you notice her hands raw from scrubbing, her eyes hollow from exhaustion? Murmurs rippled through the relatives. Some shifted uncomfortably, others bristled. She liked hosting, Vivien countered. She insisted on doing everything herself. No, Carmen snapped. She asked for help, repeatedly. You just didn't listen because it was convenient to believe she was tireless. Do you know how many hours she spent preparing last year's dinner? 37 over 3 days. 37 hours of work you all devoured in one sitting. Hudson flinched, memory cutting sharp. The night in the kitchen, when I had asked him for real help and he had brushed it off with golf and excuses. She told you? He said hoarsely. She told you too, Carmen shot back. But you were too busy defending your comfort. She begged you, Hudson, and you left her to drown while you went golfing. The room was silent, except for Timmy Sanders tugging at his mother's dress, whispering, Mommy, I'm hungry. His small voice landed heavier than any accusation. Vivien drew herself up, armor of composure cracking. This is humiliating. 32 people without dinner because of her selfishness. No, Carmen said coldly. 32 people without dinner because all of you treated one woman like hired help instead of family. And when she finally reached her breaking point, you blamed her instead of looking in the mirror. Gasps circled the room. Some relatives looked away, shame flickering in their eyes. Others stiffened in denial. Hudson's stomach twisted. The photo on his phone burned in his mind. Katie's smile, free in a way he hadn't seen since their wedding day. He looked around at the chaos, the angry voices, his mother's fury, and realized something with brutal clarity. His wife hadn't run from duty. She had run from them. The doorbell rang again, startling everyone. Another cousin arriving, no doubt, expecting food and warmth. But inside the house, the air was colder than ever. The crash of waves was the first sound that greeted me when I woke, not the shrill insistence of an alarm. Sunlight spilled across the hotel sheets, warm and honey gold, and the Hawaiian breeze drifted through the open balcony doors carrying salt and plumeria. For a moment, I lay still, marveling at the absence of urgency. No turkeys to baste, no timers shrieking, no footsteps pacing the floor above me. Just the hum of the ocean and the steady beat of my own pulse. I rose slowly, letting my bare feet sink into the cool tile, and stepped outside. Below, the beach stretched wide and white, dotted with early walkers and children shrieking as they chased the retreating surf. The horizon blazed in coral and azure. It felt surreal, like I had slipped into someone else's dream. My phone sat on the nightstand where I'd left it, black screen, a fragile peace treaty. I debated leaving it off all day, but curiosity tugged. When I powered it on, the screen erupted with life, dozens of missed calls, a flood of texts. Hudson, where are you? Call me back. Vivien, whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Come home and fix this. Aunt Margaret, we're worried. Please, just let someone know you're safe. Cousin Cynthia, Hudson says emergency. Is that true? But woven among the panic and condemnation were other voices. Carmen, I'm proud of you. You finally did what none of us dared. Ruby, I heard. I wish I'd had your courage when Vivien uninvited me. Enjoy every second. An old college friend, forwarded by Carmen. Paradise looks good on you. Don't let them guilt you back. I scrolled, my chest tightening and loosening at once. For every accusation of selfishness, there was a note of admiration. For every condemnation, a confession of envy. The phone rang again. Hudson's name. Against my better judgment, I answered. Katie? His voice was rough, ragged, as though he hadn't slept. Thank God. Are you safe? Where are you? I looked out at the horizon, the surf sparkling like broken glass. I'm safe, Hudson. I'm in Hawaii. Hawaii? He sputtered. You? You flew to Hawaii? On Thanksgiving without telling me? Yes. But people were counting on you. His voice cracked, torn between anger and disbelief. 32 people, Katie. My colleagues, my cousins, Mom, everyone was waiting. I closed my eyes, the breeze tangling my hair. They were counting on me to do something impossible, Hudson, and I decided not to die proving I could. Silence. I could hear him breathing, harsh and uneven, like someone bracing for a blow. You've done it before, he said finally. You always manage. Another pause, then, softer. So what now? You've made your point. When are you coming home? When I'm ready. He inhaled sharply, stunned by the bluntness. I stood on the balcony, toes curled against the rail, and let the words root in the open air. For the first time in years, I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't explaining. I was simply telling the truth. Across the ocean, my family's chaos churned without me. But here, with the waves rising steady and sure, I finally felt the first fragile taste of freedom. The descent into reality began before the wheels ever touched the runway. Clouds tore open to reveal gray skies, the horizon thick with rain, a sharp contrast to the endless blue I'd left behind. My chest tightened as if the air itself had grown heavier. The closer we drew to home, the more the familiar weight pressed back into my bones. At baggage claim, the carousel hummed its slow circle. I spotted Hudson before he saw me. He looked older, wrinkled shirt, shadows carved under his eyes, hair unkempt. He wasn't the polished man who left for golf 2 days earlier. He was someone hollowed by chaos. Hi, he said, voice raw. Hi, I answered. We stood like strangers, 5 years of marriage caught between us. How was your trip? He forced the words out, his tone more accusation than question. It was exactly what I needed. The silence between us thickened, stretching taut as a wire. He reached for my suitcase, but I tightened my grip, unwilling to surrender even that small control. His hand dropped, and something like defeat flickered across his face. The drive home passed in silence, punctuated only by the hum of tires on wet asphalt. He cleared his throat twice as if to speak, then let the words die in his mouth. I watched raindrops chase each other down the window, my reflection caught in the glass, different, steadier, unrecognizable even to myself. At the house, the air still smelled faintly of failure, burnt onions, stale wine, and panic sweat soaked into the walls. Leftovers cluttered the counters in mismatched containers, evidence of a dinner salvaged by desperation. I set my suitcase by the door, not yet ready to unpack. And then the sound I dreaded most, the sharp, familiar staccato of heels on hardwood, Vivien. She swept inside without knocking, coat pristine again, her posture stiff with purpose. We need to talk, she declared, planting herself on the living room couch as though holding court. I sat across from her, steadying my breath. I figured you'd say that. What you did, she began, her voice cutting like a blade, was unacceptable. Do you have any idea how humiliating it was to explain your absence to 32 people? The Sanders are telling everyone at the club that our family can't be trusted. Cynthia's boyfriend thinks we're dysfunctional. It was a disaster. I leaned back, folding my hands in my lap. Sounds like it was very difficult for everyone. Her eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing. Are you mocking me? No, I'm stating a fact. It was difficult. For you, for Hudson, for everyone who had to carry what I usually carry alone. Vivien bristled, her voice rising. You've always insisted on doing everything yourself. You never asked for help. Don't twist this into our fault. The dam inside me, the one that had cracked in the kitchen, finally burst. My voice came low and steady, sharper than hers. I asked. For years, I asked. For help cooking, for smaller gatherings, for potluck meals where everyone contributed, you didn't want to hear it. You told me I was capable, that I was a wonderful hostess, that no one else could manage the way I did. You turned compliments into chains. For the first time, Vivien faltered. A flicker crossed her face, recognition, denial, then anger again. Even if that's true, abandoning 32 people without notice is not how adults behave. You're right, I said softly. Adults communicate their needs clearly. So let me be clear now. I will never cook another Thanksgiving for 32 people. Not next year, not ever. If you want a production, hire a caterer. If you want family, make it manageable. But I am not your servant. Vivien's mouth opened, but no sound came. Rage coiled in her eyes, but something else lingered too. Fear, maybe, that her control was slipping. This isn't over, she hissed, snatching her purse. No, I said, my voice steady, unshaken. It's just beginning. She left, heels striking the floor in retreat. The door closed behind her with a final hollow echo. I sat in the quiet living room, breath trembling, heart pounding. For once, I hadn't yielded. I hadn't apologized. And the house, heavy with failure, felt lighter than it had in years. The silence after Vivien left was suffocating. The click of the door echoed like a gavel, final and heavy. I remained in the chair, hands gripping the armrests, pulse still racing. Upstairs, I heard Hudson moving, pacing. He came down a moment later, his face pale, his eyes shadowed with something between guilt and defiance. She's right, you know, he said carefully. Maybe not about everything, but about the way you left. People felt abandoned. I looked up at him, my exhaustion sharpening into anger. Abandoned? Hudson, I was the one abandoned, over and over again. You watched me drown every year, and instead of throwing me a rope, you handed me more weights. He winced, but he didn't look away. I didn't realize it was that much work. You never... Don't, I snapped. Don't say I never told you. I did. Maybe not in words sharp enough to cut through your excuses, but I asked for help. I begged for help. And every time you told me I was better at it, that I had it handled. That's not partnership, Hudson. That's servitude. His hands flexed at his sides. So what do you want me to say? That I failed you? Fine. I failed you, but you blindsided me too. You left me with 32 people and no plan. Exactly, I said, leaning forward, my voice low but steady. That's what I face every single year. 32 people, no help, no plan, but mine. I wanted you to feel what it's like. He sat heavily at the dining table, running a hand through his disheveled hair. I don't know how to fix this. If I stand up to Mom, I risk losing her. She's my family. I stared at him, my chest hollowing. And I'm what, Hudson? A convenience? A machine? You don't get to have it both ways anymore. You can't keep choosing her comfort over my sanity. His voice cracked. I'm scared, Katie. If I push back, I'll lose them. And if I don't, I'll lose you. The words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time, he wasn't hiding behind excuses. He was admitting fear. I sat across from him, the same table where I had folded menus and placed perfect cutlery for people who never noticed me. Then maybe it's time you ask yourself which loss you can live with, because I won't keep disappearing in my own marriage. The clock ticked in the silence that followed. He looked at me, truly looked at me, as if seeing me not as the woman who always managed, but as someone he might lose. His lips parted, but no words came. For the first time in years, the power in the room didn't belong to Vivien, or to tradition, or even to Hudson's quiet avoidance. It belonged to me. 1 year later, the morning felt unfamiliar in the best possible way. I woke at 8:30 a.m., not to the shrill command of an alarm, but to sunlight spilling gently across the quilt. The house was alive with soft sounds, the clatter of dishes downstairs, Carmen's laughter mixing with the playful squeals of her children, the low hum of Hudson's voice as he coaxed the coffee maker into action. I lay still for a moment, savoring it. No frantic clock in my head counting down to oven times, no endless lists, no hollow ache in my chest from carrying an entire holiday alone. Just warmth, just presence. When I came down the stairs, the dining table greeted me, not groaning with 32 place settings, but dressed simply for 8. Carmen and her husband, her 2 kids, Hudson's brother and his wife, our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Suzanne, who had once told me watching someone drown while standing on the dock wasn't help, and us. 8 people, each bringing a dish, each bringing themselves. The kitchen was a joyful mess, but not the kind that suffocated. Carmen stirred cranberry sauce with her daughter, teaching her how to zest an orange into the pot. Hudson's brother peeled potatoes, his wife setting out pies they'd baked themselves. Hudson moved between them, sleeves rolled up, a dusting of flour on his cheek, focused on gravy like it was sacred. He looked up, caught my eye, and smiled. Unforced, genuine, the kind I hadn't seen in years. "Good morning," he said, voice warm. "Ready for our first real Thanksgiving?" "Our first real Thanksgiving," I echoed, and kissed his cheek. The day unfolded without panic, without the undercurrent of resentment that used to poison every smile. We moved together, not against each other. Even the children helped, folding napkins and arranging flowers. At 2:00, we sat down to a table that didn't groan under the weight of expectations, but glowed with conversation, laughter, and food made by many hands. As we went around sharing what we were grateful for, my turn came. I looked at each face, people who saw me, not what I could produce for them, and felt something settle deep inside. "I'm grateful," I said softly, "for learning the difference between being needed and being used. I'm grateful for discovering I can love people without sacrificing myself for them. And I'm grateful for finding out who I am when I'm not trying to be perfect." Hudson reached for my hand under the table, squeezed it gently. "I'm grateful my wife taught me what partnership really means," he said, even if it took her flying to Hawaii to get my attention. The table erupted in laughter, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt what Thanksgiving was meant to be. Not performance, not duty, but belonging. The first snow of the season dusted the neighborhood that evening, flakes drifting lazily past the windows as we cleared the last of the dishes together. No one slipped away to watch television while others scrubbed pots. No one barked orders from the couch. Each person carried their own share, laughter punctuating the clatter of plates and silverware. I stepped out onto the back porch for a moment of quiet, wrapping my sweater tight. The cold air bit at my skin, but inside my chest it was warm, steady. My phone buzzed. For a heartbeat, I braced for Vivien's sharp words, another demand disguised as family duty. But the screen lit with a photo from Ruby instead. She was at a crowded table, smiling among friends I didn't recognize, candles glowing between them. Her message read, "Thank you for showing me it's okay to choose happiness over obligation. This is the best Thanksgiving I've ever had." I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. Some messages didn't need answers. They just needed to be received. Hudson appeared beside me, slipping his arms around my waist. "Regrets?" he asked quietly, his breath clouding the air. "About Hawaii?" I shook my head. "Never. About us? About how hard it's been? Sometimes. But it's been real, Hudson. For the first time, it's been real." He turned me gently to face him, his eyes earnest, almost boyish beneath the weight of the past year. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see you, to really see you." I searched his face, waiting for the old, reflexive defensiveness, the excuses. They weren't there, only raw sincerity. "Then show me," I said softly. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the snow layered thicker outside, Hudson sat beside me on the couch and slid an envelope across the cushion. "It's not Christmas yet," I teased, raising a brow. "It's not a Christmas gift," he said. "It's an apology and a promise." Inside, 2 round-trip tickets to Hawaii. Departure the day after Christmas. "For both of us this time," he added, his voice trembling slightly. "I figured it was time I saw what paradise looks like through your eyes." Emotion rose in my throat, thick and unexpected. I looked at him, this man who had once chosen comfort over me, who was now trying, clumsily but honestly, to rewrite the story. "You might just be worth keeping after all," I whispered, using his full name like I had when everything still felt possible. He laughed, pulled me close. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel invisible again." Outside, snow blanketed the streets in silence. Inside, warmth lingered, the warmth of boundaries honored, of voices finally heard, of love no longer mistaken for servitude. I had learned that choosing myself didn't mean losing those who mattered. It meant discovering who truly did. And that knowledge was its own kind of paradise.